Ever wonder how to heal your inner child and find more peace? Discover the keys to unlock your personal growth, improve relationships, and embrace self compassion like never before. Are you ready to sit in the adult chair? Get ready for an episode that will change the way you view yourself and your clients. Discover more ways the adult chair model has the power to heal, nurture, and empower us in profound ways. Don't miss it. Coming up next on the Holistic Counseling Podcast. Your path to healing and transformation begins here. This is Holistic Counseling, the podcast for mental health therapists who want to deepen their knowledge of holistic modalities and build their practice with confidence. I'm your host, Chris McDonald, licensed therapist. I am so glad you're here for the journey. Welcome to today's episode of the Holistic Counseling Podcast. In today's episode, I have a return guest, Jenny Jansen, who came on in episode 141, and you learned how to help clients heal through parts work, inner child work, and the adult chair model. Today, we're digging deeper into the adult chair model and how it can help you and your clients to nurture their parts, improve self-awareness, relationships, and overall healing. We'll also be tapping into how it can be integrated with other holistic modalities and the relationship it has with mindfulness. Again, it's time to pull up a chair and embark on a journey of self-empowerment and transformation. So without further ado, let's dive into this enlightening conversation with Jenny Jansen, Certified Adult Chair Master Coach. Welcome back to the Holistic Counseling Podcast, Jenny.
Hi, thanks so much for having me back again, Chris.
This is great to have you. This is part 2, so we're just going to jump right in. So can you give my listeners a quick refresher on the adult chair model, what that is, in case they didn't listen to the other episode?
Yeah, absolutely. As I said in the last episode, I call the adult chair kind of everything I never knew I always needed. And what the model is it is a holistic approach to understand our lifespan and how our experiences shape who we are, and also how to kind of ground ourselves in that healthiest version of self, which we refer to as the adult chair. So the model itself is comprised of 3 specific stages. And so the first stage is the child chair, which is ages 0 to 6. So it starts in utero and goes until about age 6. And this is the seat of our inner child. This is the seat where we are having the most fun. We are vulnerable. This is where our core needs and our core emotions are housed. And the thing about the child chair that many people, you think about a child, they're fun, they're vulnerable, they're curious, but we also don't understand about that child chair that that's where we absorb everything about the world. That open curiosity, we take everything in without discernment. And because our brain isn't developed enough to understand what's right and what's, or healthy or unhealthy. I don't like to use the terms right and wrong, but what's healthy or unhealthy. So this is where we kind of take in and develop the roadmap that we use for our lives. So believe it or not, most of us are functioning from the roadmap that we developed at age 6. And so from this stage, we have our core needs, we have our core emotions. This is when we understand I need a hug. We have our physical needs, of course, that need to be met, like food, water, shelter, but we also have our emotional needs. So then around the age of 7 is when our ego starts to develop. And this is the start of the adolescent chair. This is the second stage. And so it's in the seat of the adolescent or the ego that we start to kind of develop these masks to kind of understand the world, how we fit into the world. We understand that we're separate. We start to kind of create these defense mechanisms because the goal of the adolescent chair is to stay alive, safe, and acceptable. We need to belong to our environment. We need to stay alive and we need to stay safe. So I often ask the question, who did I have to become in order to stay alive, safe, and acceptable? So most of the time, people will develop defense mechanisms like codependency. They lose themselves. Some people might develop addictions because the emotions that inner child is feeling are so big and they don't know what to do. And so it's like, well, let me go grab a bottle of wine. That'll take care of it. Or let me go eat cake because that feels comfortable. Or let me go busy myself. Many of us don't talk about the addiction to being busy as a way to avoid feeling.
I'm so glad you said that.
I was like, sign me up for that one. That's definitely a mask of my own adolescent chair.
I see that so much in my practice.
And so, some people become, develop these identities. Who did I have to become? And so But all of it is a defense. And it's not a bad part. The adolescent chair kind of gets a bad rap sometimes. But really the goal of this chair, remember, is it's trying to keep us alive and it's trying to keep us belonging. It just doesn't know how to do that from a healthy perspective. So it's kind of grabbing at straws here. This is where anxiety and depression can become very prevalent in our lives because we're living in the past and the future. We're not living in the present moment. We live in absolutes like, oh, it's always going to be this way, or I'm never going to achieve anything. And so we live in these stories and assumptions as well. And so that's not based in anything factual. And so from this stage, if we had healthy models growing up that kind of taught us how to feel our emotions, how to connect with ourselves, how to set boundaries, we might slide very seamlessly around the age of 25 into our adult chair because that's when our prefrontal cortex is fully online. And it's in the seat of the adult that we are able to live with presence. We're able to live in that fact and truth instead of story and assumption. We're able to feel our emotions without getting lost up or swept up in them. And we're able to really live in a state of consciousness that helps us to be more present in our lives. Now, it doesn't mean that we are walking around zenned out all the time. We're not having our, sitting in our yoga poses with our mudras. Yes, it's nothing like that. You can feel, I know, right? I was about to say, wouldn't that be nice? But also we do have human bodies and we have experiences and connections that we have with people. And so from this adult chair, everything is so much slower. Everything is very present. We don't have to live in that reactive mode of the adolescent. We respond to situations from a place of consciousness and presence. And so the thing is about the model, Chris, this really kind of messed me up. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm living in my adolescent chair all the time, or I'm living in my child all the time, and I'm, an adult. It doesn't mean that just because you are, 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, that you're an adult, quote unquote. Because sometimes the energy of that inner child can be a little bit more present than that of the adult, or the energy of the adolescent can be prevalent when you're in your adult. So we naturally slide in and out of our adult chair through like all day. Like when I have a client that comes to me and said, oh, I was in my adult chair for the last 2 weeks since I've seen you. I'm like, good for you, because I haven't been. It's like, that's not.
Love your honesty.
Yeah. I'm like, well, no, I was triggered this morning. And so when we're triggered, we're back in that adolescent stage. But from our adult, we can sit with that trigger and we get to know that trigger. And it's like, oh, what is it that's coming up for me in this moment? We meet it with curiosity instead of judgment.
So it just makes me think about nervous system regulation too. Does that play a part in this? I'm just thinking about the up and down, like the triggers, because I use a lot of polyvagal.
Yes.
Too.
Oh,
it just made me think of that. I was like, wait a second, this sounds familiar.
Yes, there's so much of that. And in the adult chair model, so I'll kind of segue into how we work with some of these parts. Like when we notice that we're triggered and that polyvagal spike, we might go into that fight, flight, or even freeze mode. It's like that's our body's way of letting us know, oh, something is throwing me off balance. And so when we're thrown off balance, we can either grab for one of those adolescent vices and say, oh, I know what'll do the trick. Let me, go for a 10-mile run and not feel my feelings, or let me grab the bottle of wine and numb out, or let me scroll on the phone. That's another big one that a lot of people struggle with, or binging TV shows. But when we notice that nervous system spike, it's almost like from our adult, we can say, oh, isn't that interesting? I'm noticing my heart rate is increasing. Isn't that interesting? And we slow down from that adult energy and we pause. Now, so often when we feel that nervous system energy, like if say we have a flutter in our heart or we get nervous in our heart, we're like, this doesn't feel good. Let me shove it away. This doesn't feel good. I don't know what this is. Let me shove it away. That's kind of our society's default, is not to go into those uncomfortable emotions. But the way I have a sign in my den, my friend was over the other day and she's like, oh my gosh, that is everything. The only way out is through.
Yes.
Only way out is through. The only way out is through. And I will say that over and over again until the day I die, because so many of us want to jump out of this. People call it spiritual bypassing, people call it avoidance, people call it anything, but like none of us are exempt from experiencing pain in this life. And so it's like, how are we going to meet our pain with curiosity instead of as something I'm doing wrong? Oh, I must have done something wrong because here I am struggling or here I am suffering. No, it's like, that's kind of part of the human condition. And I think, little segue soapbox moment, but I think that's a big problem in our society, is that it makes us feel like we're doing something wrong when actually we might actually be doing it right. If we're allowing ourselves to feel the pain of every experience that we have, or the joy in every experience that we have. And that's part of living in your adult chair, is being present for all of it.
For all of it. 'Cause I think that's the problem, isn't it? When we disconnect or dissociate, we're dissociating from the good stuff too.
Yeah. I know Brene Brown says we can't selectively numb our emotions. And when I learned that, I was like, oh, dang it. Like, it's like, I've been doing it all wrong. And I didn't like the word wrong, but I was misinformed. Negative emotions are not anything to run from. It's something to get open and curious about. And we can do that from our adult chair. But when we're in that adolescent stage, when we get locked in there, our anger turns to rage. Our fear turns to anxiety. Our sadness turns to depression. And so we kind of create these, like, if you think about children, for example, their needs are actually very simple. I think I mentioned this in the last episode, like, they don't need much. It's like, I just need a hug. I just need you to hold my hand. I just want to play. I want to go on the swing. They don't need much. But when the adolescent is met with that child emotion, oh, I need a hug. I don't have time for you, says the adolescent. I'm too busy trying to keep us alive. And so let me go reach for the cookies. Let me go reach for the busyness. Let me go reach for, gambling, sex, relationships, all of these things that we do to kind of keep us out of that feeling state. And so, but the inner child's needs are very, very simple. And if we can go into that inner child, if we can almost meet that adolescent chair and say, hey, I'm the adult in charge. I'm here now. I can sit with this child in presence. I can sit with this child with open curiosity. You don't have to do it. And so we almost and most of the time when we meet with an adolescent or egoic part, or when I meet with clients, they're like, well, great. I didn't want to have to do this anyway. I'm tired of babysitting, or I'm tired of having to run the show. And they don't realize that there's an adult in charge. There's an adult present that can connect with their emotions, that can speak from a place of truth. And so that's the chair that we want to be in when we're having, uncomfortable conversations, or when we have decisions to make, or when we are, kind of just going through our lives instead of being in stories and assumptions or judgments, or living in the past and the future. It's like, that takes us away from the now.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And that's where all of our power is. And that's where all of our connections are.
Does this self-awareness, does that promote healing for clients to understand themselves better?
Oh my gosh. It is like I said, it's the secret sauce. So often we want to look for something outside of ourselves to say, oh, this is going to fix me. This is going to fix me. This is going to fix me. Let me do this training. Let me do this. And it's like, really, all of the answers are inside. All of the answers are inside. And that's part of, when people ask me all the time, well, how do I get in my adult chair? How do I get in my adult chair? And it's like, they're living from this place of like, chin up, like you're in your head and you're trying to, quote unquote, figure everything out. That's the adolescent. That's the ego that's saying like, oh, this is going to be the answer. This is going to be the answer. When really it is, and I've described myself as almost the love child of everything that I know. It's like all of the answers and all of our wisdom is actually deep inside of us, deep inside of our hearts and our souls. And so when we find ourselves ruminating, or the fast pace or the buzziness of just trying to figure it out, when we slow down, I often say, I'm like, okay, you're in your head. What's in your heart? Let's let your head and your heart have a conversation, and let's give your heart a voice. So like when I laugh sometimes when clients come to me and they show up and they are just like talk. It is like, okay, it's been about 10 minutes now and you have not taken a breath. Like, let me invite you to slow down. And as soon as I invite them to slow down, it's almost like you can sense the energy, like they just get very quiet, and many of them will start to cry. Oh my gosh, I didn't know. When I slowed down and I actually checked in with my heart, how much pain I'm actually feeling. And when they come into session, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to get the kids off to school, or school just started. My husband is changing jobs, or we're moving, or we're this, or,
So
I need to lose weight.
Chair to take care of business?
mean, it can be, because from our adult, we still want to take responsibility, but it's the how we go about doing it.
How you do it. Okay.
It's the intention behind it. And it's the energy that you bring to a specific task, to a specific, because it's not about, like we said, being on a mountaintop and mudra, yoga poses and, living in that Zen'd out life. We do still have responsibilities, but do we live in those responsibilities, and do we engage in those responsibilities from a place of presence or from a place of ego? I've got to get this done. Let me check the list. And it doesn't mean that you don't still check off your list, but what energy are you bringing to that?
How are you, I guess, going through the task? And that hurrying energy. I wonder if because that's got to impact your nervous system too.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. And it brought back from the last episode. I just listened to it yesterday before we recorded today about this. It just keeps coming up for me. This goes so much deeper than CBT and just regular talk therapy. It just the deeperness of this, if that's a word. I'm making up words today. But yeah, just how deep it can go. I just feel like this can really get behind a lot of negative emotion, negative thought patterns.
Because oftentimes it's the adolescent and the ego that live in the brain. And not that there's not a place for CBT, DBT, all of those, the cognitive-based therapies. I'm a therapist by trade, and I do both. I have clients that come to me for specific therapies and clients that come to me for coaching, and I think that there's a beautiful place for all of it. And so oftentimes, though, when people kind of get stuck in their heads, there's a resistance to going into the body. Michelle, the creator of the adult chair, she said, are you living chin up or chin down? And when you're in your adult, you're living chin down. And oftentimes the adolescent is living chin up. It's like the who do I have to be, the overthinking. But when you drop inside and you just sit with presence, oftentimes the answers come up through you. It's like when you sit and you ask, sometimes like when I'm in, full disclosure, when I'm in my adolescent chair and I'm buzzing around and I've got things I need to do and I kind of lose my grounding, I will literally stop in my tracks. And I'm like, all right, where's my adult? I need my adult.
So asking that question can be helpful.
Where's my adult? And if I can't find my adult, I'll call a friend and say, phone a friend. Yeah. Like, can you be my adult right now? I'm spinning out. And so, but sometimes like with a lot of practice, sometimes we do need that external. I've got clients sometimes that will reach out like, Jenny, I can't find my adult. And I'll give them a couple of quick tips. Like, can you put your hand on your heart for a moment and just pause and feel your feet on the ground? Grounding is everything. Grounding and connecting, meditating, and letting the answers and letting the guidance just kind of appear. And I know it sounds really, I don't know it does. It may sound woo-woo. And I know you just had your episode on You're Not Too Woo-Woo.
We're not too woo-woo.
Yeah, I loved that, Chris. I was like, oh my gosh, it was perfect. And so very validating for me. Thank you.
Good.
But oftentimes it's like, listening to the wisdom of the body is something that I really encourage my clients to do, because our heads, again, that's where our adolescent chair lives. And so sometimes our adolescent can almost pretend like it's being our adult. Like, no, you have to get these things done. You have to do all this. And really, when you live in presence, it's like, well, I don't have to.
Exactly.
I'm choosing to. I often say, when we have that language around living, the child chair has that I want energy. Like, I want this. I want this. Think about a kid in the store. When you're in your adolescent chair, there's a lot of I have to, I need to, or I should. I hate that word should. And when you're in your adult chair, there's a lot of I'm choosing to, or I get to. I have to mow my lawn this weekend. Well, actually, I don't. I'm very lucky that my parents, shout out, will come over and help me do my yard work. But having to do the lawn, I don't have to do anything. I can let my lawn overgrow. I have that choice. But if I want to have a nice looking house, I'm going to choose to do the uncomfortable or unfavorable task in order to get the result that I want, in order to get the outcome that I want.
Building and managing the practice you want can be challenging. That's why Alma offers administrative tools, time-saving resources, and an easy way to navigate insurance. So whether you're just starting out or have been working independently for years, you can get the support you need to build your private practice. Create a profile in Alma's searchable directory and share what makes you unique, like your specialties and areas of expertise. People who are looking for care can filter by these details so that they're not finding any therapist, they're finding you. Alma will also help you get credentialed with major insurance payers within 45 days. and handle all of the paperwork, from eligibility checks to claim submissions. That means you can spend less time on the details and more time delivering great care. Plus, they guarantee payment within 2 weeks of every appointment. You support your clients, Alma supports you. Visit helloalma.com to learn more. That's helloalma.com. Because I would think the language could lead to more overwhelm if you say, I have to do this. I got to get this. I got to mop my floor. I got to, pick up groceries at this certain time. If you're not flexible, it just reminds me of flexibility too.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like we were just saying a second ago, the energy that you bring to your 3D life. You think about like the 5D, like the meditative experiences and the spiritual connection, but we also have human bodies that we have to take care of and that we have to, now I'm using the have to, we choose to do certain things in order to make our human life more optimal and more comfortable. And so mopping the floor, for example, I don't have to, but I'm choosing to because that makes me feel joy. That makes me feel accomplished. And so going back to what we said a minute ago, it's the energy that you bring to certain things.
And when you mentioned the wisdom of the body and sometimes just being in presence, I saw how this could integrate with like DBT too and like wise mind, just because you have to be quiet.
Yeah.
To listen, right? To see what comes up. So I feel like there can be some integration with this model with other therapy models. Have you noticed that?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Because I was trained as a DBT therapist. That was that was my previous life. But yes, that was where I got my majority of my training was I worked in a DBT program. And so I often see kind of overlapping the two is like, the wise mind is like the healthy adult.
Oh, okay.
And then the ego, believe it or not, the adolescent can actually be both in rational and emotional mind. Because if we overthink or we over-rationalize, that can also be seen as a way of avoiding emotion. The inner child is probably more of the grounded emotional state, like the passion, the play, the joy, because when you're looking at the DBT mind states, like you have the emotional mind that encompasses the whole range of emotions. But oftentimes the emotional mind gets a bad rap saying, oh, you're being too emotional. And then the whole idea, another thing I just thought of with, emotion regulation, the whole model of emotion regulation is all about understanding and feeling your emotions. Riding the wave of a negative exposure to negative emotion is one of the skills that's taught in DBT. So there is a beautiful overlap. And that's where I say like what I said in the beginning, there's space for all of it. But there's also a beautiful integration of ways to incorporate the body more to a more traditional therapy model as well, in my opinion.
I'm just trying to think of the holistic counseling out there, because I know I use a lot of yoga too. So that's what I'm wondering. What is the best way to integrate with other holistic modalities? Is it just trying to... I'm just trying to figure that out in my head,
Yeah. So it's funny. Michelle will tell you, she's like, I've gotten every training under the sun. And what she did is she took, everything from, and which I found interesting. The only one that she hasn't gotten trained in is internal family systems, which is, I say the only one. That's interesting. I know it is. And she's like, I didn't even know that existed. And so it's just, all of this kind of came to her, but, and then like the Gestalt therapies, we use a lot of chairs, obviously, in the adult chair model, and so to integrate it with other modalities, we do a lot of it's energy and it's spiritual and it is somatic and meditative. I walk clients through some of the most powerful guided meditations, to help them really get deep into their experience. And so, and I say I do this, I really feel like it just comes through me. I don't realize, I just kind of sit in presence and allow the energy to kind of flow through. But it's walking people to meet their inner child or walking people into a traumatic experience, but doing it with such diligence and such tenderness that they are able to hold space for themselves in that moment. Like we bring the healthy adult into a negative experience that they may have had and almost work toward reparenting that younger version and speak truth to whoever wronged them, create a new ending. So there's a lot of beautiful trauma work that can be done with the adult chair as well. A lot of somatic, like experiencing in the body, people that feel very disconnected from themselves. It's a way to reconnect to the energy centers of your body and say, oh, where am I noticing tightness? I might guide somebody through a body scan. And I love this. This was a tool that she had taught us during our training. It's like, so often we start body scans going from the head to the toe, but sometimes the adolescent gets a little dicey. The adolescent might block the flow of that body scan. So one of my favorite ways to do a body scan is actually starting from the feet up. And so kind of doing that ground up approach and allowing that energy to flow up through the earth and feel that grounded state, because again, the adult chair is very grounded. And so it kind of opens up, and then connecting to the crown chakra at the very top, and then allowing that beautiful flow of energy to come through. And it really does open clients up to experiencing themselves on a more holistic level and even spiritually. I use a lot of EFT, emotional freedom technique, in sessions to really help to clear out some of the stagnant energy and then re-imprint new ones. And so, that's one of the tools that I use to help clients with their adult. Even calling in, like if they can't find their adult now, it's like, what do you imagine your adult would be like? And I've had clients that call in like, well, my grandmother was like this, but she may have been loving, but she, didn't really hold her boundaries. She was kind of a pushover. Or they really liked a character in a movie. I really love the way that, this mom in this show really parented her kids, or I really like the energy and the power of this person. Like, who resonates with you? And you can almost like makeshift your own healthy adult. It doesn't have to be you necessarily, but somebody that you can model after and say, okay, well, this is my ideal adult. So like when I'm like, I need an adult right now, it's like, I might call in some of the energies of people that I know, or people that, celebrity. Obviously I mentioned Brene Brown how many times on this podcast. Like, I love her. And so sometimes she might be one puzzle piece of my healthy adult. And so there's a lot of different ways to help clients to really activate and access those parts of themselves, but they have to, like you said a minute ago, you have to get quiet with it.
Allowing that presence.
Yeah, because really the answer lies within. Yeah, I can't tell you what to do, because I'm not you. I can guide and I can give you suggestions, and I can give you, as therapists and coaches as we are, we can't tell our clients what to do. But I often say, I will give you the best of what I got, and then you take what resonates with you. But I can't be the one to, okay, well, if you do this, and this, for the next month, okay, you're fixed. See you on your way. It's like, to me,
so we don't stay in that permanent adult chair.
No, I know. I know.
Right.
I'm going to talk to Michelle about that, because obviously that's a problem. But, but I don't think we're meant to, because I think when we're on our journeys, we're meant to learn and evolve and grow. And we might reach a state of presence and adult, and then suddenly we might get knocked back off our feet. We have a major life transition. And so some of these, that's just the natural ebb and flow.
I was just going to say, I was thinking back to what you're saying with grounding and, body scans. And I could see how really integrating with mindfulness being present, right? The present moment, connecting with all that is, could be so powerful with this adult chair model. And because I give homework often for clients to pick a chore or any normal, quote unquote, normal activity like drinking tea and be mindful. And it's kind of the people that haven't done it before are kind of like, what? I don't get it. But once they do it, to be able to, right, just do the dishes and, feel the warm water, use your senses, I could see how this could really help them to get away from that busy energy.
Yeah. And just be.
Yeah.
You don't have to be anywhere. You don't have to do anything. You just have to be. It's like, I really resonated with the book, The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle, and being the observer of everything, like, especially when you're triggered. And it's like, isn't that interesting? That's a phrase. I've said it several times, but it's like, that's just, huh. And then another one that I love is, here I am feeling this way. That was a little,
oh, I like that.
That was a little nugget from an energy coach that I went to one time. It's like, when you're in the midst of suffering, or you're in the midst of a really hard time, it's like, here I am feeling this way, period. Because that brings us back to presence. It gets us out of that story. It gets us out of that, it's always going to be like this. I never get it right. All of those stories and assumptions and the anxiety and depression of everything. Here I am in this moment feeling this way, and without judgment. And then it's like, when you sit with that, and then oftentimes it's like, okay, what do I need? How do I nurture myself? How can I show myself the presence and love that I deserve and that I need in this moment? And kind of segueing back to distress tolerance in the DBT program, the main point of distress tolerance is, how do I deal with the situation without making it worse? How do I cope with the situation without making it worse? And so part of that, though, is you have to come to presence of where you are. You have to acknowledge and radically accept, I'm here and I'm in pain, and I'm going to be in it. The only way out is through. And what is that pain here to teach me? What does that pain want me to know? If I have a deep ache in my heart over a breakup or over losing a job or over my kid going to college, I have a deep ache in my heart. And what would happen if I sat in presence with that ache in my heart and didn't try to avoid? It's like when you sit with those feelings, you learn about yourself and you learn about what's important to you. My kid going off to college, wow, I'm really going to miss them. And aching of the heart.
I'm here for you now.
Yes, I'm here for you now.
I learned that you said that last time, putting your hand on your heart and,
yes,
and saying that.
And imagining that higher adult self, or if you can't be that for yourself in that moment, imagine that higher adult self. Imagine that you have just a beautiful blanket of warm energy. You know, if you have a higher power or source that you believe in, a God, imagining that with you. And, you know, just coming to the power of, I say the power of now all the time now, but it's coming to presence and saying, here I am feeling this way and I'm okay.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Reminding yourself of that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It doesn't last forever. You know, oftentimes you may have had this, well, if I start crying, I'm never going to stop.
Yes,
well,
I get that all the time.
It's like, well, I've never met a person that has cried forever.
No, the best I've heard is I've had several clients say, well, if I really feel my emotion, then, you know, it's going to get so bad. It's never going to stop. And I'm going to end up in a psychiatric ward.
I have so many people. It's so funny. It's like, I'm never going to stop. I'm like, well, if we were never meant to stop crying, all of us would be crying all the time because babies cry. That is the natural ebb and flow of emotion. And we just and part of being present and part of being aware and the observer is recognizing, you know, again, this too shall pass. And I love the quote that says, it might hurt like a kidney stone, but it will pass. It might pass like a kidney stone, but it will pass. And I was like, oh, there's
I got some imagery with that one.
Yeah. It's like, oops. But yeah. So, I think that there's just a beautiful, you know, you were asking, and I know I kind of went off on a bunch of different tangents, but about the integration of other holistic modalities, it really is that. Like the adult chair model, there's the chairs, that's kind of the foundation, but then there's so much depth and richness underneath each component of each chair, you know, like in the child chair, there's that, you know, the intimacy. If a client comes to me and said, I feel disconnected, or I can't be intimate with my partner, or I've lost my passion, I don't know what I want in life, boom, inner child work. They come to me and they say, I have a problem with alcohol, or I'm codependent, or, you know, I busy myself, I can't slow myself down. We might need to go to the adolescent chair first. And we might need to say, okay, adolescent, what are you here to do? What are you here trying to do? Oftentimes it's to protect the child from feeling pain. And so when we can acknowledge what chair am I in, it gives us a beautiful touchstone to start to get curious about what could be going on. And maybe, you know, adopting various tools and techniques that bring the holistic approach to our experience so that we can live a more integrated life. We can acknowledge, oh, there's my adolescent. Hey there, honey. Like, what's going on? What are you showing up for? Or my inner child comes out all the time with my dog, like dancing around, freedom. And it's acknowledging that life it's all of it. It's a beautiful tapestry of light and dark, of bright and dull. Like we experience all of it together. And I think when we can kind of get around the idea that life has to look a certain way, we can actually release and live with a little bit more freedom to experience life on life's terms. And that sometimes can include having to wrestle with your adolescent chair a little bit.
Yeah.
Or go back and reparent your inner child, even though it might be hurtful and painful. It's like, I saw a quote the other day that was, the scariest thing to me is thinking that I might wake up in 10 years as the exact same person I am today.
Ooh.
I know. It's like, truth bomb.
Yes, because I'm all about personal development and growth.
Yes. And so it's like, when you think you don't want to do the work, that's your ego. What part of you doesn't want to do the work? What resistance are you coming up against?
So what would you say to a listener who might be skeptic about this model and say it sounds weird? I don't know. What would you say to them?
So snarkily, I would say that's your ego, but there's your adolescent chair. And I'd say, what part of you feels resistant? You know, if you're skeptical, that's understandable. I mean, I would hold space for anybody. And, you know, it may not be the right thing for every person, just like there's no one right way. day, but I guarantee you there will be something in these tools, in this model that can facilitate healing and transformation. I have not met a person yet that says this model is crap. And most of the time, because I think I mentioned last time when I was first starting out, like I said, I was a DBT therapist when I first learned about the adult chair. And I just kind of started weaving little tools here and there. And my clients were like, I need more of this. Like, I want you, can we do this more? And, I had clients that were coming to me, right out of the hospital from, a psychiatric, suicide attempt or a psychiatric break or something really, really horrific and traumatic. And we would start to peel away at these parts and peel away at this inner child. I had a client that went from seeing me twice a week to twice a month within like a season, like 4 months. She was able to really dive in and learn how to reparent her inner child because her adolescent was taking over and she was ending up in the hospital. And it's like, okay, so your adolescent is here trying to keep you safe, keep you from feeling this pain. But what if we actually nurtured the emotional pain, the simple, I say simple, but the very just core emotional pain that your child is experiencing? Like, I need to know I matter. I need to know I'm loved. I need to know I'm wanted. And I remember a client that I worked with who was like, well, I wasn't wanted. I wasn't wanted. My parents didn't want me, or they didn't, a lot of childhood emotional neglect comes to me. And what we're able to do is almost educate that child and say, mom and dad, they aren't able to care for you the way that you deserve to be cared for. And that's really sad. And I'm so sorry. And you feel that pain with them. And then when you bring in that healthy adult, it's like, but I'm here now. I'm here and I want to be the one to take care of you. And let me tell you, this is who I am. I have a house, I have a family, I have a dog. This is what I'm doing. I have all of these tools that I'm learning how to be the healthiest adult that I can for you, because that's what you've deserved all these years. And I'm so sorry that you didn't get it, but I'm going to die trying to prove to you that you are worth it, that you matter. And then it's connecting to that younger inner child and saying things like, what is it that you need from me today? Even if you wake up and you're feeling relatively steady and stable, you might just check in and say, hey, just want to check in and see if anything's going on with you today. I feel like being outside. Okay. Well, I've got to get some work done, but then later on we'll go outside. And it doesn't have to be this deep, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to unearth every little trauma that I've experienced. I don't encourage that really.
It can be simple too.
Oh my gosh, it is so simple. It's almost
too simple.
It's almost too, that's what people say. It's like, is that really all I have to do? And I'm like, well, like I said, you don't have to do anything, but
I am choosing.
Choosing. You may choose to just sit with your hand over your heart for a minute and say, I'm going to connect with myself right now. Let me just see
what comes up.
See if anything comes up. Exactly. Not what comes down. What is coming up for me? And it may not be anything, or it may. You might notice a tiny little my heart just had this pinprick feeling. Like, I'm not sure what that is. Like, let me get curious about it. And I literally will sit with my eyes closed and imagine my heart. What does it look like? Oh, there's a little pinprick in there. Okay, let me just look at this pinprick here for a second. Let me just be with that. And sometimes it dissolves and goes away. I just needed you to notice that I was here. And then sometimes that part might say, oh, finally, somebody's paying attention to me. Let me tell you what's going on. And it might give you information like, okay, well, I'm really sad that of this interaction that you had with your friend yesterday, that's still kind of aching. And so, okay, well, thanks for letting me know. I'll circle back around from my adult and have this conversation with this person.
It's really a beautiful model, isn't it?
It is. It really is. It's, like I said, it's everything I never knew I always needed. But I think that there's a beautiful fluidity and grace. There's so much grace in this model to say, you're not going to be in your adult chair all the time. I often say, I'm sorry, that's not the goal. But the goal is to live with more presence and consciousness of when you fall out of that state of presence, to notice, almost to let your adult be your default, and then notice, oh, something's throwing me off balance here. Let me check in with my parts. Let me check in with myself. I have a client who I love this metaphor that she said. She's like, it's almost like life's a stage and I'm the director. It's like, okay, who's on stage right now? So sometimes we'll do that check-in. It's like, okay, who's on stage? Who's present? I often use the phrase, who's got the microphone? Who's driving the boat? And so when we can just get still and curious and not judgy, gosh, just oh, well, crap, there's my busier again. There's my busy bee.
But that's mindfulness too, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Non-judgmental.
Yes. And it's just noticing and like
Noticing.
gently bringing yourself back and saying, okay, wow, that threw me off. But now that I'm aware, it's becoming conscious. I'm going to butcher it, but it's this awareness of bringing your awareness from being unconsciously unconscious, like you're not even aware that you're unconscious, to being unconsciously conscious. You're not aware that you're unconscious, like you're living kind of in that default autopilot, to then bridging it to living unconsciously conscious, where it's not even a thing, that your default is consciousness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had a feeling I was going to butcher that, but hopefully
It's okay.
Hopefully I saved it well enough to understand. But so that's kind of the idea, is to learn how to live unconsciously conscious. So that way, when you do get thrown off, it's like, oh, this isn't my default anymore. That's not who I am anymore. I'm not a busy bee. I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a codependent. This is who I am now. And so if something's taking you off track, it's something to notice and something to get curious about and not judge.
Yeah, I think I understand a lot more today. And I appreciate you coming on the show for part 2.
Yeah, it's so nice to be back.
I know.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
We could talk all day.
I
know. So how can listeners connect with you or just learn more about the adult chair model?
Sure. My website is trueconsciousliving.com. And I'm also on Instagram and Facebook. I don't really post a lot, working on that. One of those own adolescent blocks that I have, I guess.
The adolescent's like, no, I don't want to.
I don't want to do it. So, but I do have a profile on Instagram and Facebook as well. And also on my website, I actually have a free pop-up that's Uncover Your Worth. And so it kind of is like a little mini ebook, I guess, that kind of guides people into just uncovering some of those parts of self that may have been covered up over the years, and figuring out, like, most of the time people come to me and they're like, I don't even know who I am anymore. And so this little mini ebook might be a good place for people to start and get curious about the model and about kind of some of the different tools that they can use to kind of bring themselves back into that state of presence, or start to peel back those layers, start to get curious about, who am I?
Yeah. And we can put that in the show notes as well. Yeah. So everybody can access that. But that brings us to the end of another episode. And be sure to tune in next Wednesday when another episode drops. Are you feeling disconnected from other holistic therapists and longing for a connected community? If you want to join me and other holistic therapists, and Jenny's on there too, who are as excited about deepening their knowledge of holistic modalities as you are, come on over and join my Facebook group, the Holistic Counseling and Self-Care Group. In this group, you can ask those burning questions about how to integrate your holistic modality in sessions and any other ways you need support. Come and join at hcpodcast.org/holistic group. That's hcpodcast.org/holistic group. And once again, this is Chris McDonald sending each one of you much light and love. Till next time, take care. Thanks for listening. The information in this podcast is for general educational purposes only, and it is given with the understanding that neither the host, the publisher, or the guests are giving legal, financial, counseling, or any other kind of professional advice. If you need a professional, please find the right one for you. The Holistic Counseling Podcast is proudly part of the Sightcraft Network.